Okay, James, alors pardon. Sorry for two things to say in French before we switch to English. Okay, why do we speak French? Spoke. Okay.
I have this very cool jacket. But I can't button it and unbutton it. It's very sad.
Alors, contrairement à ce qu'on vous avait demandé de faire pendant la projection, à partir de maintenant, si vous voulez sortir vos appareils photo ou vos petites caméras, vous êtes les bienvenus. Deuxièmement, quand vous aurez une question à poser, soyez assez gentil de nous faire un signe, de façon surtout à ce que les hôtesses qui sont équipées de micros et qui sont tout à fait en bout de salle puissent arriver jusqu'à vous. Et vous passez le micro, comme ça on perdra le moins de temps possible. D'avance, merci. Logistics.
I understood.
Okay.
There are the doors. I got it.
Not yet. Venice. Most of the reviewers who were in Venice immediately, unanimously went, it's Apocalypse Now, the space opera. And some threw in the book that Apocalypse Now is based on, which is Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Do you agree? Do you not agree?
It is, but it's not. I mean, if you were to watch Apocalypse Now with Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces right next to you, you would find that that movie follows the Campbell blueprint almost 100%. In other words, there's a kind of a basic storyline, which is really, in this case, it was me trying to do Telemachus' side of the story in the Odyssey. But then it winds up being Apocalypse Now because, you know, you rip off the people you love. You're inspired by the people you love. So, yeah, it's Apocalypse Now, but it's not. He doesn't, you know, he's going after his actual father in this, which is a whole other set of circumstances psychologically and emotionally that a mythic sort of symbolic father isn't. So, yeah, it's true, but it's not.
Okay. I read in the Hollywood Reporter that you've been sort of thinking of making that kind of a movie, or that movie in particular, based on two articles that you had read in 2011?
Oh, yeah. I had read two different things. One thing was an article about the Mars mission that is going to be undertaken in 2033. That's when we have a chance to get to Mars because, you know, the planets orbit not in perfect circles, and it's when Mars is as close as it'll ever be to the Earth. So that's our window. And I had read a thing which said that basically 4 people are going to be in a space which is, oh my God, considerably smaller than this, maybe even a quarter of the size of this space, for a year and a half. And they're going to have to find people who suffer from what they call, or have, I shouldn't say suffer from, have schizoid personality and kind of what you might call on the spectrum, almost a kind of Asperger, and emotionally very shut down. I thought, well, that's interesting. You know, the very qualities that are going to be demanded to take this trip to Mars to be able to tolerate it are exactly the wrong people to talk about it on some kind of spiritual level, psychologically complex level. You know, it's like when you see Neil Armstrong in his first press conference along with Buzz Aldrin after they were released from quarantine. And they asked him, well, what it meant to see the Earth as this tiny blue dot. And he said, the left thruster on the lunar module had 6 cubic liters of oxygen fuel. You know what I mean? He talked totally as an engineer. Now, I'm not bad-mouthing Neil Armstrong. He did maybe the greatest thing any human's ever done. But he wasn't equipped to talk in any kind of terms that we might think are emotional or metaphysical. He just talked about the technical. So I had read that, and I thought, well, that's interesting. And then, you know, as I often do, I sort of wrote down some ideas, and I circled it, I cut it out, and I put it in a file. And then around the same time, I know this is thrilling, I had read something about Enrico Fermi when he was first talking to the other scientists, and they were going to conduct the first nuclear explosion test in New Mexico. And he said to them, well, there's a 90% chance that the entire southwestern part of the United States won't be destroyed. Should we do this? I thought, they did the experiment, thank God it didn't happen, but there's a 10% chance that the entire Southwest would be destroyed, and they did it anyway. And so I thought, well, what happens if a guy is in deep space, they think he's doing something, and then the two ideas sort of collided. And that's what became the movie, really.
Now, the movie is a new genre for you, totally. But as film goers, we obviously go back, at least at the beginning, to 2001 Space Odyssey.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's a bit frustrating because you can't really do anything that Mr. Kubrick did not already do. And I realized, especially, I was in trouble with music. Because you can't put classical music up against picture, and then you go, oh, that's 2001. And I couldn't put electronic music up there because somebody said, oh, that's Clockwork Orange or something, or Blade Runner Vangelis. And I couldn't really put traditional score because then it would seem like kind of hackneyed. So then I thought, well, the first piece of music I put up against picture worked so wonderfully well, and I knew that people would say it ripped off Kubrick, so I couldn't use it. And I realized I'm kind of in a bind here. But yeah, everyone owes a debt to Kubrick because, he did a science fiction movie that became almost like science future fact in some ways, and he had such a unique and wonderful understanding of human behavior. It's funny when we're talking about 2001. Obviously, I love 2001. I'm going to get that. In 2001, he's got all this stuff that's totally awesome and wow, inspiring, awe-inspiring, incredible. You just sit there, you go, wow. But you know what I think is kind of the best thing in 2001? Well, maybe not the best thing, but one of the best things is he's got these, I don't know how well you guys remember the movie, but he's got these astronauts that go to look at the monolith on the moon. They've dug it out, and there's a kind of area that the monolith sits in, and they're walking down, looking at the monolith, and you have this liggity music, like this. It seems very serious, and you're looking at this black slab, this minimalist 60s sculpture. And then the guy says to the other astronaut, or he motions to the other astronauts to get a picture. It's such a perfect understanding of human behavior. They're faced with a version of God. Let's get a Kodak moment. And you realize that what matters, and also with Hal, what matters is the details of human behavior, not really the visual effects. So everyone owes a debt to him. Now, having said that, I tried to do the opposite. Because the Kubrick film, he beats the trap brilliantly, but he basically says, there are aliens. Now, in most movies they before that, they were depicted as, like little green men, or you see The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is a great movie, but it's the Kratu Barara Niktu, it's this tall metal guy. By the way, do you know the story behind that guy? He was the usher at the Mann Chinese Theater in Los Angeles. Then it was Grauman's Chinese Theater. Maybe it's Grauman's again. The Grauman's Chinese Theater, and he was almost 7 feet tall, but he was very skinny, and he could not lift the woman that he was supposed to lift, so they had all these bodies. Anyway, I'm boring you with movie trivia. But in any event, Kubrick beats the trap about aliens because it's a black monolith, and you can project anything you want onto it, right? Are they good aliens? Are they bad aliens? I don't know. It's just they're aliens. You don't really see them. There's a human zoo. It's very mysterious. But for me, it presented a philosophical problem, if I can sound pretentious for a second, because I couldn't figure out, even if it's good aliens or bad aliens, it's still a kind of false gods scenario. And I don't believe in that. I I'm not bad-mouthing 2001, by the way. It's one of my favorite movies ever. But I'm saying that he beat this trap by having it be so mysterious. Because there are no aliens that are going to come and bail us out of our problems. And there's no aliens that are going to come try and wipe us out, and we all have to team up to fight the bad aliens. That's not going to bail us out. You know, this is what we got. This is where we live. We have each other, and that's kind of it. So I said, I'm going to try and do the first movie that says, oh, there's nothing out there. So I thought, oh, great, I'll have Tommy Lee Jones say, there's nothing, no life elsewhere. And that was the code of the springboard for the whole thing. I'm talking too much, all right? I don't get out enough.
In generally speaking, are you into space film?
No, I hate them.
Not.
No, I
don't know, Star Wars or E.T., whatever.
No, that's an amazing movie, but here's the thing about him. He beats the trap because the movies play like fables. I mean, I don't think you watch E.T. and you say, how accurate is that a representation of what might be an alien? I mean, that's not the point of the movie. The movie's about that kid's loneliness and about his parents' divorce, and it's a metaphor, really. So the film is beautiful. But Star Wars, I never considered even science fiction. I consider that fantasy. I like Empire Strikes Back a lot. I think that's a beautiful film. But I was, as a kid, I have to confess, Star Wars was not my thing. I don't know, I remember like Wookiees and X-Wing fighters. And all my classmates, they thought it was the greatest thing ever. I was a Jaws guy. I liked the angry shark killing everybody. And then I was an Apocalypse Now guy. I kind of skipped the Star Wars moment, you know. It just seemed, for kids, even though I was 8, I don't know what the fuck I thought should be watching, you know. But I definitely, and the thing about space movies, usually, like I say, they philosophical cop-outs, in my view, or they just seem cheesy.
Well, they're generally very positive, very optimistic, generally. Yours is not. I don't think. Not.
Well, I don't think the film is negative. I mean, at least
I didn't say it was negative.
No, I know, but what I was trying to do, and maybe I failed at this, but what I was trying to do was to say the Earth is what matters. Human beings are what matter. You can think you want to be alone. You know, it's okay. I want to be by myself. I want to just have dinner by myself. I want to go to the movies. I like going to the movies by myself. I hear people say that to me all the time. I say, yeah, that's fine. But if you're made to be alone, that's quite a different issue. And if you do any research about solitary confinement, it's the worst punishment a human being can endure. You know, you apparently start hearing voices over and over again. You start going through your whole life on a kind of endless, and it leads to madness very quickly. If you're in solitary confinement for 30 days, it causes serious and permanent mental damage. So I found that was kind of a darkness, but that if the guy returns, well, that's not too bad. He's with other people. So I thought that was positive. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Now, what was the mindset that drove you to cast Brad Pitt as the astronaut?
In order to make a film where you're trying to establish this idea of the stereotype of masculinity and say that is bullshit, that this idea like your pulse rate never goes above 80, you're awesome, man, you just can handle anything, you're a man's man, and to say, well, you know what, that's kind of like toxic, that's kind of a problem, because he can't confront anything emotionally and he's been in denial for 30 years or whatever. But in order to tear that down, you need to start somewhere. You need to start with the myth in order to destroy it. And he wanted to do it, so I thought that was a good idea, because you can't really get more archetypally American male than Brad. See, if I cast, you know, I don't know, Wallace Shawn as the astronaut, there's nothing, Wallace Shawn's a terrific actor, but you know what I'm saying, there's nothing to tear down in the myth. You know, can you imagine that? I'm here for a spacewalk. You know what I mean? There's nothing to tear down. So with Pitt, you have a kind of almost an archetype. That was the motive behind it anyway.
Now, there are two other characters in the film, those who are crucial, although they're limited in terms of time, and that's Donald Sutherland and Ruth Negga. Donald Sutherland knew Roy as a kid. He knew he was a friend of the father, and he says the last time we spoke, it didn't go well.
Right.
Ruth Negga never lived on Earth. Her parents were murdered by the father, Roy's father. So we're back to the father figure, which is almost a constant, at least a frequent aspect of your work. It was Maximilian Schell in Little Odessa. It was James Caan in The Yard. It was Robert Duvall. And this time is Tommy Lee Jones. I was tempted to say Colonel Kurtz, but you got that one down. Why the recurrence to the father figure?
He's just about the first person you meet in your life, him or your mom. It's a very elemental relationship. It governs and dictates so much of our unconscious. Governs is the wrong word, but it's such a part of our unconscious, you know, and then our conscious as well. You know, our parents are like gods to us when we're children. I mean, it's the only thing that we know, and what they say is so essential to us. What they teach us and don't teach us is essential. And in some respects, what I'm trying to do is to get rid of the fluff, the flab, to try and get it as elemental as I can. Fathers and sons, mothers and sons, mothers and daughters, fathers and daughters. And to try and get at the core of what it means to be a person. Now, that's not easy to do in 2 hours, but you have a tremendous shorthand. If I say to you, I'm going to make a film about two pals, I have to go out of my way. I did this, by the way, and it was a headache. On The Yards, I had to go through huge expository, I have to establish what their relationship is, because you don't make a series of assumptions already. But look, the most famous father-son movie, The Godfather, okay? They shot all this stuff between Pacino and Brando for the beginning, and he cut it out. And there's only one dialogue scene between Pacino and Brando in the whole 3-hour movie. There's a moment in the hospital, but they don't have an exchange, really. It's that scene in the garden. Before that, you make all sorts of assumptions about their relationship, and you can, because we know what fathers and sons, we bring some baggage to that relationship already. So I was trying to get very elemental. Like I said, I was really trying to rip off the Odyssey from Telemachus' point of view, about how his father had gone away for 20 years, and that sense of loss and abandonment. And that was really my attempt to be kind of mythic and simple. So that was the reason.
Entendu. On va prendre des questions de votre part, si vous voulez, le temps que je lui pose. Alors, il y a une question là et une question là. There's one thing that you don't find in your film, if you abide by the space movie definition. It's no futuristic gadgets and no weapons. And people dress like with ordinary clothes. Quasi.
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, well, I hate that in movies where you watch like make noises and they're doing all this stuff, and it's instantly dated. You know, like a year later you watch it, you go, what is that? I didn't want people to get hung up on the gadgetry of it. You know, it becomes it's an aside that people get distracted by. As for the clothes, all I did was, Albert Wolski was the costume designer. He was this legendary costume designer, Albert Wolski. And I drove him kind of crazy. He never started with the diagonal zipper and the bell bottoms or anything weird, but he did. So I would say to him, Albert, you're not, I don't want you to win any awards for this film. And he would say, I don't understand what you're saying. I said, Albert, you're going to do the most unnoticed clothes movie ever. But it's a space film. I said, right. So we looked at clothes from 60 years ago, basically. We tried to see how clothes had changed in 60 years. And they really haven't changed all that much. I mean, people don't wear hats now, they did, but the suits are semi the same, ties have been widened, thin again. But it's very similar. So this idea that 60 years from now or 70 years from now, everyone's going to wear like polyurethane bags or something, doesn't that look kind of silly? I mean, look, again, love 2001, top 5 of all time. If you had to pick one thing about it that you could kind of peg, it's, you know, Dr. Haywood Floyd in his Nehru jacket or whatever. So I was trying to avoid that and make it not the focus of the film. So all we did was we did like the Apollo spacesuit with less puffiness and so a miniaturized, because the future will have more miniaturized jetpack and that sort of thing. I don't know if this all works, and you know, what the hell am I don't know what I'm doing.
Il y a une question là. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a le micro là?
Hi.
Allez.
Good evening. First of all, thanks for that amazing movie. You did a masterpiece again, and I'm jealous of
I
your
like
talent.
the way you talk. Thank you.
I've always been fascinated by the end of your movies, and especially the final shots of the immigrants and the lost city of Zed, and the way you link people or even spirits through the manipulation of time and space that allows cinema. And I had the feeling that it's a theme that goes through all your movies, and that with this one, with the infinite of space, you had the way to experiment around that theme and had a kind of accumulation, but I wonder if it's the feeling you have about that one.
I have a controversial answer.
By all means, please.
I'm trying to think if I should answer this. It'll get me in trouble. Well, with the size of this movie and the kind of... it's always a collaboration with the studio, the actor, everything when you're trying to make a film. The ending to The Immigrant was planned months before and is not an actual shot. It's... Darius is going to kill me. It's not a practical shot. You can't do that shot in life. It's a series of visual effects panels. The boat, the window, the reflection of it. It's not... In other words, it was part of the original design. And the same thing goes with The Lost City of Zed, because that was not a visual effect shot, but I basically built this greenhouse attached to this house. It was a very strange thing to do. In this case, the original ending, as I had planned, is when he gets led out of the capsule. And then the last 40 seconds or so was the sort of one compromise I made on the film, because I didn't want people to feel like the movie was a downer. And being led out of the capsule, for some reason, it had a sadness to it, which everybody sort of said, well, this feels like a real downer. And I kind of didn't want that, and so I added that little coda where he's sort of saying, oh, I'm fine, although I kind of wanted it also to feel like a dream. But the ending really originally as designed was him being led out of the capsule. And you'll see probably a similarity between that shot and the ones in The Immigrant and Z. Having said that, I don't know which one works better. I mean, it's really for you guys to decide. And I so did not want the film to feel like a dark ending, because, you know, he goes through hell, and then at the end he's in hell again. I mean, that to me is a very limited mindset, you know. It's interesting when we talk about Apocalypse Now. The way that movie ends, spoiler alert, is there's like a multiple superposition image, the helicopter and his face, and you hear Brando, but he is returning And he's returning with Sam Bottoms, who's this sort of innocent, drugged out, like he's bringing back the child or something. It's very beautiful. He doesn't stay and become Kurtz. He moves on. It's transcendent. So it was very important to me that Pitt's character feel like it transcends. So I don't know if the ending achieves that, or if it implies that he moved on with his life, which I thought was very important. I didn't really answer your question. Very elaborate question, but I don't know.
Whole movie, basically, it's like with the fates, for instance, in this one, I felt it's like a theme that goes through your whole filmography, the purity of the way cinema can, by the link of editing, create a link through time and space, even in the far reaches of space. And I felt like it's something that goes all on and on in all your movies, but especially in that one, that you had some kind of cumulation of that, but maybe not.
No, it sounds really good. You know, what I like is when people have much better ideas about my own work than I do. No, I'm kidding with you, of course, but I was talking about the ending because in some sense, it's out of my hands, I'm trying to communicate an idea to you, and I was trying to make a very simple myth. And if you feel that way, and you feel it connected to my other films in that way, that's fantastic. But I promise you, or maybe I threaten you with the fact, that I don't sit at home and think about the film's manipulation of time and space. I mean, I'm kind of thinking that I need to take out the garbage, because it might stink if it sits there for too long and my wife's going to yell at me and all that. I have a much more practical approach to it, and I'm not being glib. It's almost like you're trying to tell the story as simply and clearly as you can. I always say this to my collaborators: we want to tell the story so clearly that the ambiguity can emerge. You know what I mean? So I love what you say, but I can't answer it because it would demand a level of analysis about myself that would basically mean I should be in a mental institution. So I don't know. I didn't answer him at all.
No, but I like your answer. Madame, qu'est-ce qu'il avait là? Allez-y.
Hello. So,
hello.
I have a friend, and I say, "Oh, I'm going to see James Gray," and so my friend is Jewish and he has a question, and
I'm sorry, your friend is Jewish and he has a question. That's what you said. That's the best sentence I've ever heard in my life.
And in fact, this question is personal for him. Is, as a Jewish, is that a repercussion in your cinema? And also, I would like to know if you've seen the new version of Apocalypse Now.
Ça n'a aucun rapport.
Non, c'est...
Ah bon, d'accord.
What was the first question from your Jewish friend again? Let me see if I get this straight.
Vous pouvez traduire?
No, you got thrown
Go
by
ahead.
Apocalypse.
Say it in English again.
Yeah, you want to know if, as you,
En tant que juif,
as a Jewish,
Yes.
Is have a repercussion on your cinema? If there is,
Yeah, I understand. Person, I'm not a practicing Jew. I haven't been to synagogue basically ever. I'm kind of an atheist. But what you're talking about is the cultural influence, I think. Yeah, there's a level of misery in the movies, isn't there? I guess that comes from being a New York Jewish guy. I don't know. It's sort of like his question. Oh, he left. He was so pissed. There's a level. He's here. Oh, he's here. I thought he was hiding. I can't see anything. These lights. It's a level of self-awareness that I don't really. I'm telling you, I don't think. I'm a Jewish guy. I'm going to tell a Jewish story. It's like, I try to think of a mood first, relationship, a character, and I guess it's in the films, but that's because that's part of who I am in the background. You know, I remember a story which when I think back on it now, it really does inform a lot, which is my grandfather had an old Model A, not a Model T, but a Model A Ford in the garage, and it was not functioning. And I asked him, through my father who translated, because he didn't speak English, even to the day he died, he didn't speak a word of it, really. I said, why do you have a car that you can't drive? It just sits in the garage here in this, in the alleyway. And he answered my father, he said, because you never know when they'll come for you. Which I thought, that's horrible. I'm 9. What are you talking about? But I remember the story now, and that thread, really, dare I say, using a dirty word, of tragedy, does wind up getting through to you as a kid. And I think it's in the films. Sometimes even when I try to hide it. When I made Two Lovers, I was trying, Joaquin and I thought, let's make a comedy. And the two of us shot the movie, and we were just laughing and laughing. I just thought, this is hilarious. And I never forget, the first screening of the film, when I cut it together for a group of about 25 friends of ours, and we thought, this is hilarious, this movie. And the lights came up, and a friend of mine came to me and said, that is the saddest movie I've ever seen in my life. I thought, I am so untalented with comedy. I think it has to do with that kind of feeling in the house, that thread. Maybe it's being Jewish, I don't know. I think it's more Russian, actually, than Jewish, to be honest with you. Because I got friends from Israel, they're having a party every 5 seconds. So I think it has to do with Russian. Because you read Anna Karenina, that's an 800-page book with no jokes. Not a joke in the book. Oh, Apocalypse Now, did I see Apocalypse Now? I have not seen the new cut. I've had some chances. But this got finished a week and a half before Venice. And I kept missing the chance. I'm going to go see it, of course. But he has that French plantation in it, right? Put it back in.
Yes.
Why, he's got to leave that out, doesn't he?
I hope not.
I hate that scene. And the rest of the movie's the greatest thing ever. Well, I don't know. What do I know? Maybe it's great in this new one. I don't know.
All right. Si vous avez le micro.
Yeah, that's me. Hi.
Ok. Ensuite, une question là.
Okay. I'm here.
She's over there.
Hi. Thank you so much for the movie. It's actually, I had a great time, and it was very moving. And also, I wanted to go back to religion, but more the religion of the characters in the movie. How do you explain that all the astronauts, and especially McBride's father, have what appears to be a very strong relationship to religion and God, and Brad Pitt's character, he doesn't even mention it. So what do you think is his relationship with religion and God?
That's pretty good. Well, the constant talk of God, that if you look at the 12 astronauts that went to the moon, there's apparently a very different psychological state. There's astronauts on the International Space Station, the shuttle. It's about 200 miles into space. Of course, the moon is 250,000 miles away. So when you are on the surface of the moon and you see the Earth in the sky as a separate celestial body, it apparently has a much bigger psychological effect. And if you were to track the stories of the 12 white male astronauts, you would know that a lot of them became like born-again ministers, like Charlie Duke, became very obsessed with the idea of God. They speak of God constantly. It's maybe a way of explaining this frankly horrifying view they probably had of the Earth. I mean, that's probably horrifying. I mean, they're walking around, they're like, I'm strolling on the Earth here, on the moon here, Houston, and it's real cool. The dirt is amazing, but Neil Armstrong went to his farm in Lebanon, Ohio, and you basically never heard from him again. Buzz Aldrin became basically an addict. Edgar Mitchell started talking about aliens and totally lost it. Like I said, Charlie Duke became born-again Christian minister, and Dave Scott. You could go on and on with these guys. And I thought that the constant mentioning of God was because when they started to see the Earth as this tiny thing in the sky, they had to have something to explain what went wrong with them. Now, of course, I think of God. I feel his presence so close. I mean, that's literally like a quote from an astronaut, you know. So it was my way of saying that was their immediate way of dealing with the psychological dislocation. As for Roy, I think the guy's probably, in the beginning anyway, he's so damn repressed and so in denial. I don't think he thinks of God at all. I think he's probably one of those guys who thinks like, my lunch had too many carbohydrates in it. You know what I mean? Like a totally practical, pragmatic person. Because I met a bunch of astronauts for the movie. And it's like, it's the most functional, like, today it's our job to make sure the vents on the ISS are functioning and that there is not any interference with, you know what I mean? There's such a pragmatic, practical, functioning side to them. And I don't think Roy had spent much time. In fact, he says, I haven't been to the moon in forever. I don't think he has that kind of relationship with deeper space. So he's probably not as religious as his dad is for that reason.
Question là-bas?
Hello. Congratulations for the movie. Hello.
Oh, there you
Here.
are. Hello. Hello.
You said earlier that you chose Brad Pitt because you wanted to deconstruct the male figure, the American male hero. Your entire movie is deconstructing, actually, the hero's journey and putting him in hell, showing that he has so many weaknesses before solving, actually, the problem. Why did you choose to show that a hero actually is not that heroic?
All you have is heroes that are heroic now. That's the norm. Every superhero movie, everybody's heroic. They're flying through buildings and everything's crashing and blowing up and everybody's saving everybody. Nobody has a flaw. Everybody's perfect. They're wearing a suit that's made of metal or whatever and flying around. Those movies, the superhero movies, have a point, they have a function, and the Avengers, I saw it with my son, it was very entertaining. But that's every movie now. So I was trying to do something different. I was trying to say that we're flawed, we make mistakes, that, you know, I'll tell you a brief story. There's a wonderful memoir by a fantastic nonfiction essay guy named Paul Fussell. He's dead now, he just died. He's quite old. Anyway, it's called Doing Battle, The Making of a Skeptic. I just read it, it was really great. It was about his time in the European theater in World War II. And he tells a very interesting story about being a hero. He was in the brush, somewhere actually in France, I think, right after D-Day. And he was in this wooded area. And he was with his friend. And his friend said, I've got to go to the bathroom. I got to go to the bathroom. And he said, just hang out. He said, I got to go to the bathroom. He said, fine, go to the bathroom. So he wanders off. A minute goes by, 2 minutes go by, 5 minutes go by. And he starts to feel that something is very wrong. And he stands up, and he sees 3 soldiers having a cigarette. And he waves. He waves to them. And they look at him like he's an idiot. They look at each other. And when they turn to look at each other, he sees the German helmet. And he kills them all. They had killed his friend a few minutes earlier. He became a hero. It was an accident. His heroism was an accident. We like to consider heroes, we like to consider that idea as a perfect thing. That we're going to go out there and act in the right way, and we're going to be successful in life. But fate has a very powerful draw, you know, and sometimes we don't do the right thing, and sometimes we make terrible mistakes, and sometimes our actions, however well intended, lead to terrible consequence. To me, that seems more like life. Superheroes are fine, but that's not how I perceive the world. And maybe I'm wrong, but somebody's got to try to do it, right? If everybody's always succeeding at everything in movies, it doesn't really feel very much like I can relate to that. I'm always making mistakes.
I'm afraid our time is up, but I'll have a last question. What's your next project?
Well, it's not a movie. I'm doing Marriage of Figaro for the Theatre de Champs-Élysées, which I start next month, my first opera, which is, that's very frightening. I don't really know what I'm doing, which is really, I said to the guy who wrote, Michel Franck is the guy who asked me, he's the nicest guy ever, and 5 years ago he met with me, he came to LA, he said, let me take you to dinner, I will take you to dinner and I will convince you have to do an opera. I said, I don't know what I'm doing. He said, Marriage of Figaro. I said, no, that's not my favorite Mozart. I like Don Giovanni. He said, good. What about theater? I've never done anything for theater. Good. I've never ever done opera. Good. I don't want to do it. Yes, okay, good, you do it. So I said no. I went home, and my wife said, what do we'll be in Paris, that's the greatest city, and it'll be great, the whole family will come, and, you'll get this great life experience. And I kind of thought about it, I said, well, I don't really know what I'm doing. She says, well, you'll learn, you love opera, we love opera, we go all the time. I said, I know, I sit in the opera, I love it, doesn't mean I can do it. She says, no, you can do it, I know you can. And now it's 5 years later, and it's coming up now, and I kind of thought I'd be dead by now. And my wife can't come with the kids. So I'm now all of a sudden this dream she had where she was going to be walking, with the Rue de Rivoli, and she's going to have an incredible time. And I'm going to be sitting by myself going, can you sing there in the corner? I don't know what I'm doing. I have talked to some directors who've done it, for film. I've talked to Bill Friedkin, who's done several operas, and he was great, very helpful. I talked to Sofia Coppola, who did one in Italy a year ago, and she basically just said, no different from a movie, which I can't believe. I just cannot believe it, because in movies I'm going, camera's here, and there ain't no camera in the opera. So right there I'm lost. But that's what I'm doing, and I'm sure it'll be just really special, interesting, unique.
Definitely.
Thank you.